Hey, folks. I'm just getting started here. Um, kind of show you what I'm going to be doing. Um, let's see here. So I'm going to be working on a couple things probably. I've got some pages for a personal project that I'm working on. If any of you have seen me in the last 3, 4 years, you know this project. It's called the Forest Guardians, and something that I've kind of gone in and out of over the last several years. So basically, the current kind of rendition of it is it's going to be a graphic novel, or at least that's kind of the format that I'm using to kind of tell the story right now. Initially, it was going to be just sort of like a sort of illustrated novel, which I know graphic novel, illustrated novel kind of sounds the same, but initially I had made it out to be like a text block here, and then here's an illustration to go on the other page, that kind of thing. And I did a Kickstarter on it, and the Kickstarter, I think we got a little over halfway funded, um, somewhere around there, and then it did not get funded. So, but in hindsight, I'm glad it did not get funded, because I really wasn't super in love with the layout, which is probably, you know, people could probably sense that in the work that I put into it up to that point. But anyway, so I've got my Wacom tablet here, and I'm in Photoshop, and so I scanned in these pencil sketches. So basically, what I'm going to do, and bear with me because I've had some issues with this connecting, and I don't know why I'm having such a hard time. Let's see if that worked. There we go. Okay, yeah. So bear with me. I'm kind of working through some of that. Um, I don't know why it keeps disconnecting on OBS, but it does for some reason. So I have two pages here. You can kind of see this main character. His name is Arlen. Um, so I have him like jumping off of a cliff, and then if you're not familiar with graphic novels, basically a graphic novel is a comic book, but it's a little more beefy, more well-rounded. But so he jumps in, big splash, and then it might be kind of hard to see for you guys. But then a bunch of bubbles, water swelling around, and then he is kind of drifting in the sort of lake river area here. So this is page 2 of the first volume. And so I just wanted to kind of basically what I'm going to be trying to do today is establishing an art style. Because I have my art style, but I want to establish something for continuity purposes, for the whole book, for the volumes of the Forest Guardians. And I haven't actually written out the full like first volume yet. I've only got like 6 or 7 pages in because I'm thinking about changing some things up. So this is really just, like I said, a personal project of mine. But you can see this would be the next page. So we have a character here, one of my favorite characters that I've written up for this and designed for this story so far. This is Teague. And so he's like, just watched Arlen jump off this cliff here, and he's a little pig dude, or a big pig dude, I should say. Um, and so he's like worried about his friend, and then he like rushes out into the water, and then Arlen's perfectly okay. Um, then he's sort of grumpy, frustrated about that, and then we could see sort of just some character development here early on, that I want to play around with style wise. Um, I don't know if I'm going to go like painterly with it, or if I'm going to try to make it more of a like a line and color traditional comic style. Um, my comfort zone is probably somewhere in between, but I really want to try to push myself and try to do maybe some more painterly style things. So I'm gonna dive into that, and then I've got some other things too that I possibly, if I get bored of these pages, then I'll try to maybe work on something else. But so over here on my layers, you can see I've just got this background that's essentially giving me a little bit of color to start with, just kind of putting something on the page so I'm not staring at white the whole time. And then I just have a blank layer here for my colors, and then I've got the line art on top. And so basically, line art is set to multiply, which means that it's going to only show the dark, so all the white of the page gets taken away. So otherwise, if it was just normal, you would see that. Um, so I may bounce back and forth if I get kind of too caught up in, um, the page and all that stuff. I may bounce back and forth, but I think for now we're going to keep it like that because the hope is that I get rid of the line or the pencils at a certain point. So, but we're going to jump into it. Normally, how I would start this, and you guys let me know if you don't like listening to me talk and you'd rather just like look at the art. I can turn the camera off and just kind of make some art. Um, I can have some music in the background, um, but the music that I have, um, I don't know. Well, if you want music, let me know. But otherwise, I'm just gonna talk. But um, yeah. So I think you could see like in the in OBS, I keep freezing up on the application. I don't know why that's happening. Let me get that fixed. There we go. Yeah, like I said, I don't know why that's happening, but it keeps happening for some reason. So, all right. And bear with me. I don't know if these clicks and stuff on my tablet are going to be too loud. If they are, let me know. Doesn't seem like it's going to be. So, um, let me know if you can hear me too, because I'm not sure how this audio is coming through. I'm just using the MacBook audio. Um, so yeah, I don't really utilize the keyboard shortcuts on here very often, so I may just end up using the laptop. But um, like I said, just bear with me on that. So, all right, so I'm going to start just by filling in some rough color, and I may actually just use a random color just to start. Um, Basically, all I want to do is kind of get a general outline of the character. So what I'm doing here is just using a lasso tool. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you'll know what that is. But basically what it does is it allows me to make a selection of the layer that I'm on so that I can isolate what I want to isolate. And I don't want to get too caught up in all of this because, like I said, I'm going to try to go with like a painterly style here. Um, so basically, what you can see though is once I get an area filled in, I could go um, basically select that color, and then I can get the color I actually want it to be. If I've got the right brush, anyways. So yeah, obviously we want his skin tone to be a little more colorful than that. I think we're gonna throw a little more red in there. So he's supposed to be pretty tan because he's outdoors a lot, but I don't know if I want him that tan. Maybe something in there for now. We'll work with that. See what we got. So I don't want to get too tied up in like, painting like right up next to each other and all that stuff. So I'm going to get a little loose to start with. Um, just because I don't want to get bogged down. I just want to get the overall feeling first. Obviously, I don't want to sacrifice like the feeling of the pencil sketch. Sometimes when you're working on stuff like this, you can get too bogged down in kind of relying on the pencil. And so, what I want to focus on is trying to just get the feeling and color of what I got already with the pencils. If I go quiet for a time, you'll have to forgive me because sometimes you got to concentrate on what you're doing. Because I'm using this Huion tablet. It's a pen tablet, so it's not a display tablet. Sometimes those are a little harder to work with, so you'll see the canvas sometimes rotate um, around in like weird directions like that. But um, so again, trying not to get too familiar with it. I may actually even turn this layer down even more just so I can see what's underneath it. So just trying to fill in skin areas. And I'm going to go beyond those areas because I'll put the clothing and stuff over top of this, which is the nice thing about Photoshop is you can work in layers. So I just decided to work on this page. Don't know why. I guess it has a full character on it, and so it's pretty large too. So I wanted to nail down, um, not only give me a really good design reference for the character, but also just kind of act as a style guide too. So this page, or this hand rather, is not a very clearly defined hand, not as defined as the other one. So this is where you got to be careful not to like follow the pencil too much. So that's pretty good there. I'm going to thicken up that wrist though. All right, let's get down here. Zoom out a bit. Undo is your best friend. So sometimes you'll see me like do a line and then I'll cut in just because I don't want to worry about, like I said, painting right up next to each shape. So I have been a traditional artist basically my whole life, but really since like middle high school. High school, I really got into it. Um, so I'm used to doing things in a traditional workflow. But I got into digital when I was in high school, in college, really, because I went to school for design using like Adobe products and digital design kind of stuff for advertising and marketing. But I got into digital art in Photoshop when I was in high school. A little later in high school, um, but I really loved watching like all those different YouTubers and stuff who would do concept design, and I thought for the longest time that I was going to be a concept artist. And kind of in a way, things have come full circle, and I do concept art for like short films and stuff when I work on those. Um, for Booth 42. But I thought for the longest time that I'd be a concept artist or a Magic the Gathering artist or something to that effect. And who knows, one of these days I may still want to pursue something in that field. But I think early on I didn't want people to tell me what to draw. I really like the idea of having my own personal projects. Like I really like the idea of going to school for uh, concept design and all that stuff, where you had to make up projects that were your own ideas and stuff like that, where you were at least given a brief and it was a lot of your creative input. But I'm sure in a lot of these fields and careers and stuff that they make you paint and kind of make art for things that are not your original ideas. Which I mean, more power to the people who can do that. I think I would personally struggle with that. Um, all right, so we've got. All right, looks like we're cutting out here again. Sorry about that. I don't know, like again, why it's doing that. Fix that real quick. There we go. Again, if that happens, just leave a comment. I think I can see comments on here. So yeah, okay. So we've got a full skin tone here. So I'm just going to start blocking in maybe the hair and all this stuff up here. Um, and I'll go ahead and do another layer for that. Like I said, I don't want to get too bogged down in layers just because I'm trying to make this um, a little more fluid. And that's where like this hair is going to get just kind of a rough fill in. I want to follow a general direction with it, but I didn't have a super clear idea in my pencil sketch. So I'm going to be figuring a little bit of that out. So this character that I'm working on now, he's a very, at least in my head, he's a very like free spirited yet like self conscious character. So, which I know that probably sounds contradictory, but I guess he likes the idea of being adventurous and having being free spirited, and that usually results in like maybe some dangerous situations here and there. But um, in contrast, his best friend Teague is very much. Okay, this is cutting out again on me. I don't know what's happening here. There we go. So I don't know what's happening. But in contrast, his best friend Teague is very much not adventurous. Um, okay. All right, let's not get bogged down too much. I like that color. Let's go with it. See what happens. Again, I kind of want this to have like a painterly illustrative style, so I need to at some point break away from being so precious with it. Um, which I would say is probably one of the biggest um, pitfalls that I have when it comes to my artwork when I'm working digitally. Now, when I'm working traditionally, it's not a problem. I just go for it, and it seems like I can, kind of get over that real quick. But so one of the things with this character is he's got a lot of curls, but I don't think that'll come across too much. Maybe just a little bit, just in the roundedness. All right, so there's that. Let's just rough in his undershirt real quick, which I'm just going to keep on the same layer. See why I would change it. Um, Actually, let me change it because let me do a new layer just in case I want to change the color of it later. Just going to use kind of a strong color just to be able to see what I'm doing. So a lot of times with digital, you can get caught up in the mentality of like, oh, outline, fill in the shape. Um, and you don't rely on the brush as much because it just doesn't feel like you have a brush in your hand. At least that's kind of the pitfall that I can fall into. So it helps to find like Photoshop brushes that have different shapes um, and whatnot. But and then also just some that have like different textures too. So like experimenting with that. Um, I think I'm gonna pretty much stick to this one for now, though, just because I don't want to deal with it. And let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm not trying to, you know, market anything or whatever. This is just my personal project and kind of keep me accountable. Do it with other people watching, just so I'm more likely to do it. Um, just go ahead and put his eyeballs in because it's starting to creep me out. So I'm gonna go almost white. Let's see, we cut out here again. Here we go. Yeah, like a near white, just because you don't really want to go ever like white white. Um, if you go white white, it is you don't want to you want to save your whites and blacks for like the most contrasting areas of your image. Um, let me go ahead and just drop in. Same with black. You never really want to go like true black, and when you have black, you want to kind of err on the side of color. Not that anybody watching really maybe cares about that, but um, like I said, I don't know how rendered this is gonna be. And please, if you use Photoshop, do better than me. Don't have 20,000 layers and no names for your layers. I know they look super freaky right now, but let's throw some color in there first, actually. I don't know if that eyeball looks necessarily right, but that's okay. Maybe fill in. I think we'll get to that when we actually start rendering stuff out. Alright, let's fill in his poncho, or his cloak, whatever you want to call it. It is a bluish color. It's a little more old, so kind of in that realm. So we can always change it later. Go in here. I'll add this above his shirt. Let's just get a little larger here. So there's kind of a flow to this. I don't know if you could tell, but you're sort of looking at the underside of it right here. And then his leg kind of kicks up. But we'll get to that when we actually start rendering it. And again, I'm trying my hardest, but there's part of me that wants to color in the lines. Not a very big part, but there is part of me that wants to color in the lines. And so I'm trying to be conscious of that and actively seek out not coloring in the lines. You have to forgive the faces that I make. And luckily, I'm wearing a hat, so my face gets covered most of the time. Hey, my sister Dixie. How do I do the pencil under the starting color? So the pencil is actually real pencil. And so you can see if I get rid of this background, this layer is just a picture that I got. And so if you see this, basically is just my pencil sketch. And so I scanned that in with my printer scanner thing and brought that into Photoshop, lower the opacity on it quite a bit in here, and I put it on top on a multiply layer. It basically gets rid of all the white, and then it gives me a guideline to see all the layers underneath. And then I throw that under it, and it kind of just helps me get rid of the white on the page. So that's how I do the pencil. You can see it's like actual pencil. So like if I zoom in here, you can see like all the texture where it got scanned in. It wasn't really a super high quality scan. But yeah, and then I just literally have this picture underneath it. So yeah, if I go and really increase that layer, you can see the pencils a little better. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you could do this. I'm just doing it the way that I'm used to doing it. Um, whether it's like the best workflow or not. Like I said, I'm more of a traditional, used to doing the traditional stuff, so I like working digital, but sometimes it's like I gotta wrap my brain around it differently. Um, but yeah, okay, it looks like I need to fix this again. I don't know why this keeps. There we go. Cool. Forgive me while I take a sip of my espresso that I made. All right. Yeah, once I get these layers filled in, at least on this character, um, I'm going to start rendering out and experimenting with some different style things and whatnot. Um, and so now that I'm on the back of the cloak, I'm actually going to put it underneath the layer of the skin just so that I can kind of go in with one shape and not worry about having to paint over any of this or paint in between any of this stuff. And I may actually go ahead and drop it down a shade just so I can distinguish. Again, I'm trying to be painterly. Um, just because I want it to look like one of my paintings, or as close to one of my paintings as I can get it. And why not just paint it? Like, I don't know. There's probably better reason um, to watch, but oh, cool! I didn't see that. That's Nolly watching. Hi, Nolly. It's my niece. My favorite niece. I mean, what? I didn't say that. Hopefully, no one else is watching. Um, I didn't say that. It's not recording, right? Yeah. Let me actually. The light looks a little dim. Let me see if I can. There we go. Might be a little better. Um, what was I talking about? Oh, why not just paint this? I don't know. I could. I really could, but for some reason I decided let's give digital a try, and this is part of the experimentation. Like if I could figure this out, you knew it. I knew you knew it. It's fine. Um, but yeah, if I could figure out like how to do this in a way that I like the style, because every time I do digital, I get caught up in you know I could probably do this better in traditional or whatever. Um, so that's why I'm trying it now. I just want to see if I can get something that I like that's repeatable within like a method so that I can crank out these pages once I get them all written and all that stuff. But I don't know. This might be a little too philosophical. I don't know who all is watching, but I think there's a beauty to taking your time, especially when it comes to art. And in this day and age where everything is AI and expedited, and how fast can I do something? How much of the process can I take out? Or how much of myself can I take out of the process and have machine or a robot do it for me? Um, and I don't know why we would want to do that too much. And I don't think digital art is that. I think that you know there's a danger in like over streamlining art process because I think the process in itself makes it art. Whether that makes sense or not, I don't know, but I like the process. And sometimes when the process takes a long time, somehow it makes the art more valuable. Not even just money, but like to yourself. Like when you spend 100 hours on something, you may not even like the piece of art that much, but there is something to the it's got some quality that you love about it because you spent so long on it. Whereas like I could generate some AI stuff and it could look good, and I could have it on like a desktop wallpaper or something. But like to actually hang it on my wall and really like choose a space for it and all that stuff, I think that's where art um, elevates beyond AI and design and all that stuff. All right, so I've got pretty much this character rendered out. Let me Again, I'm not sure why this keeps freezing up on you. Sorry. There we go. So I've got this character pretty rendered out. Not rendered out, filled in. So I'm going to start rendering, and I'll probably start. I should probably start on the face because that's the part that I'm going to have the most trouble with. Um, Not that I can't do faces, it's just I'm much better at textures on materials than I am with faces. Um, and so I'm working with a limited brush palette here too. I haven't had um, a chance to get all my like brush settings dialed in. So I'm just working with a couple brush packs, and they're not great. I don't really put a whole lot of stock in brushes, but I'm just gonna find one here that I can kind of mess around with um, for the time being. Yep. Okay. So I'm just gonna start blocking in. Let me make sure I'm on the right layer here first. How many times have I done that? Jeez. Not. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a clipping mask. You can't see it because my face is covering it, but putting a clipping mask on that so that I can draw like kind of behind and over top of shapes. I will eventually condense all these down just because I don't want to, again, I want to make it painterly. Um, which, let me change the brush because I don't want to get too caught up. Let's do this. Let's do the good old oil brush, which is not too oily. And I'm actually going to paint. I know what I just said, but I'm going to paint right on this layer. I'm just going to lock it so that I actually get some mix in here. So whenever you're doing any kind of art, you got to think about light. That is art. I mean, you're painting light. And so my light source is going to be coming from um, probably a little bit overhead. So overhead definitely, but I'm thinking like from. Let me do a new layer. Thinking like this way. So he's slightly backlit, I think. So most of his face on this side is going to be in shadow. And the way I'm going to do that is literally just put it in shadow. Um, and so I'm going to work a little broad, and then I'll hone in on some details. Again, try to keep in mind what I'm trying to achieve with this kind of painterly style. So again, light coming in from this way. So we're going to carve out shapes, kind of following the forms. And then here, maybe having a little bit of that, just so we can kind of define those forms there. And this shadow color is not great. Most of this hand is going to be in shadow because it's blocking the light. Maybe with the exception of that thumb. And this pinky here. Let's see. Oh, I need to fix this thing. I don't know why it keeps messing up. There we go. Some reason it's losing connection. me get that ear. So when you're not entirely sure about the overall tone and color, that's why I kind of did it on its own layer. So I can actually go into the adjustments panel, and I can do a color balance. And so I can literally change on just this one. If I do a clipping mask, I can change how the skin looks. Maybe it didn't have enough magenta in there before. It was a little too on the green side. So we'll throw a little magenta in there, and then maybe cool it down just slightly. So we start to get, so if we go to the extreme, you can kind of see what you don't want to do. But if you just barely play with these from like the starting point, you push it just a little bit, we get a little bit of warmth back in the skin. Because you got to think under our skin is blood. And so you want to have it look like your character's alive. I think that's pretty good. So let's go back to this layer. Let's get rid of that. It's pretty good. So I'm just going to keep playing around with this. And I think most of the face is going to be in shadow. Even most of that ear too. So same with the arm here. The exception of maybe just a little bit wrapping around. And just a little bit on the hand there. We can always pull it back. Let's do the whole hand and then let's try to leave a little bit. So anything that I do here from this point is going to have that layer here. So what I'm actually going to do, you can't see it behind my face, but I'll pull my layers out actually, put them there. So I'm going to actually merge this down so that it just solidifies that as a solid layer. Just so I don't have to worry about any weird color picking stuff later. So again, I don't want to get too bogged down in like refining at this stage, but I am going to cut in just a little bit of more refined features here because I want to make sure these are preserved. Yeah, like I said, faces are one of my biggest struggles. I know generally, like, I can do them really well, but it takes me a long time. So getting all of that dialed in usually takes a hot minute. But generally, there are zones of the face and different like color temperatures within those zones. So like the forehead and the chin, maybe not the chin, but like the jaw generally have like a cooler, more green tint to them. And not a lot. I mean, you don't want to do too much. And a lot of times you can really just take it into the gray. And going a little gray with your color will kind of inform a lot of that. So if I just go gray here, you can see how we're already getting kind of the shadow side. And the more we push that and the darker we go and all that stuff, like you can really push it. Because I mean, you can even see on my face kind of like the different shadow patterns and stuff like that. But you don't want to go too dark and too gray, because then you'll start kind of losing the life. Keeps freezing on me. Yeah, you'll start kind of getting a lifeless, looking face after a while if you keep doing that. But that's when you take a little bit of warmth back in and the cheeks and whatnot. Start putting a little bit of life back into the character around the mouth and cheeks and eyes. Especially the ears. The ears are usually like pretty vibrant. Kind of usually have this deeper shade in them. That's really just because you have a lot of surface level blood vessels and stuff like that up there. Um, Something like that. So I'm really just kind of blocking out color. Um, and so one of the things is like this is an outdoor scene, so I really want to up the contrast quite a bit on this. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and take my line work away just because I don't want to I don't want to rely on it too much. Um, Let me find this hair. And I think adding some shadows on this hair will kind of start helping me define a lot of this. So again, thinking about directionality and all that stuff of the light while I'm painting in this. Keeping all that in mind will help. So right now the face is really flat. So we want to add quite a bit of contrast. Pretty quickly. So one way we could do that is just get back to the skin layer. So more contrast is over this way, less contrast is towards the grays. You still have contrast in your grays, and you should, and you shouldn't go too saturated either. But one way to really help define, like, hey, this is going to be my darkest dark, and you choose to do it in the area that's like away from your light source as much as you can, kind of whether it's in the recesses or, again, you don't want to make it look like a craziness, but one of the things you can do too is play around with smudging. That's way too strong. Drop that. again, that's I have to play around with this quite a bit to find a good balance. But we're starting to define it, and that looks pretty atrocious. But you kind of have to go through those bad stages to get to the good stages. Let's go here. So we're still in the mixer brush. There we go. So we're just going to hit kind of some softer, and I don't want to go realistic. Like, that's an easy trap to fall into for me. So I could easily start going, realism and real soft transitions and stuff like that, but that's not what I want to do. Again, trying to keep it painterly, which means you're going to have hard edges. Let me bring those pencils back in just for a second to get me kind of a line here. Okay, so I'm going to take a stab here. Getting this mixer brush. Not a huge fan of the mixer brushes. So I'm going to lay in flat color. I think there's too much contrast. This looks like a mess because it is. I might be getting to a point where I need to just reset on it. Let me do this. I'm going to define a couple of highlight areas. One of the easiest things to forget is how much this is basically just sculpting. I think we went way too gray. Not super satisfied with this. I might be getting a little too close up on it too. But Again, it's part of the process. It's got to get ugly before it gets pretty. So another thing I need to do is introduce like the atmosphere color, which is kind of it's going to be outdoor, but he's kind of fallen beside this cliff. I think part of it too is that mouth is weirding me out. Let's see what I can do about that. Let's go here. So he's got kind of a weirdly defined mouth shape because his mouth is open. So let's just grab that and let's grab dark color. I think that'll help just start carving some of that in. Yep. Okay. Let me redefine this chin. If I was painting on the right layer, that would help. Um. Oh, hey, Dalton. Sorry, I didn't see. Thanks for texting me. I didn't see that you were commenting on YouTube. Yes, he does have a name. It's Arlen. It's part of the Forest Guardian story that I'm developing. It's a personal project of mine. And am I doing this with a trackpad? Lord, no. I am doing this with a stylus and a Huion um, pen tablet thing. Basically, it's a giant trackpad, so more or less a trackpad, but it has a stylus with it. So I'm drawing on it, and it's showing up on the screen. So, and I see for some reason this keeps messing up. You know, promise we're making somewhat progress here. But no, thanks for the question, Dalton. That's good to clarify. Again, I don't want to get so super duper soft with it that I'm losing the overall feeling and stuff, but sometimes you just gotta go for it. So I'm gonna get an almost white and I'm gonna fill in these teeth here. Bring back the pencil. I can't see too well, but um, basically what I'm gonna do, just kind of rough in that shape there of the teeth. So we can see that start to get roughed in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but with the other side. Leaving a little bit of gap here and there. I don't want a whole lot of contrast in his teeth. So again, let's cut that off. And you know, there's a reason I'm experimenting with this, because I'm trying to nail down a style for this guy. Not just this guy, but for this project. I got to be honest, I'm not loving the direction of it. I've never really like nailed down my like digital painting style. Um, it's always sort of evaded me over the years. Um, let's pull out some of this and let's see if we can't get some more texture in here, back in the skin. So in two, you just got to start thinking about like kind of the facial anatomy and where things would get kind of stretched. You got to start like breaking away from here's the, you know, skin layer, here's the eyeball layer, here's the everything else layer. Um, Sorry guys, this thing keeps this application window thing keeps messing with me. Yeah, so kind of trying to add some more texture and things in here. Kind of subtly though, I don't want it to be like a bunch of random blobs of shapes either. So I need to start blending some things together too. That's the hardest part of all right, where's my there we go. See, I don't like that. My biggest problem is I can't get Photoshop brushes to do what I want to do with a traditional brush. And again, I don't know why I fight with it so much. I'm like, I just want the things to act like they'd act in my normal workflow. Um, so yeah. So this character and the story is from a book that I was working on a couple years ago, and then I tried to self-publish with Kickstarter, or I really tried to fund the creation of it with Kickstarter, and it never panned out. So I ended up turning the story into more of a graphic novel approach as of recent years. I keep doing that, and I keep hating it. So yeah, I need to. What I need to do is I need to stop approaching this like a digital medium, and I just need to start painting as if I was painting like a an actual piece on like canvas or paper or something. Um, so I keep wanting to like work around it, and it's just not working for me. So excuse me while I get kind of messy and all over the place. Um, but yeah, so the story itself is a work in progress, but the characters have been developed for a couple years. Um, so yeah, Dalton, normal paint. So like my biggest difference between digital and traditional medium is I can paint and it's all one layer and I have to work up layers. And so if I want to undo something, I literally have to cover it up. And so there's a difference in like how your brain treats it. And I'm a little less precious with traditional because I'm like, oh, well, I can just cover it up. I can whatever. And I should be like that with digital because even more so, like I can, move layers around and delete. But because you kind of get caught up in the framework of like, here's this thing has a place, this thing has a place. And so sometimes I have to like condense everything down, limit my layers, and work that way. Otherwise, I get too caught up in just what I can do. So there's a kind of an idea in art where limitation actually breeds um, better ideas and like fresh ideas because when you limit yourself, you're saying like I guess that problem solving part of your brain kicks in, and it's like, well, I don't have this, so how can I work around it? Um, so yeah, I mean that's the idea, anyways. But part of it too is just I have not worked um, digitally in a while. Um, so all right, so I'm kind of at a point where I think I am ready to kind of collapse a lot of these layers because um, I keep wanting to mess with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to group them, just so I have a backup in case I ever get kind of caught, and then I will duplicate that group. Maybe there we go, and then I will merge group. So I have this layer, but now I also have a backup layer. Um, and I'm going to put this down here. Yep. So now I got a backup layer where I can mess around with it if I need to kind of take a step back. Um, so part of it too is like how detailed do I want to get on a yeah, Dalton, that's a great limitation breeds innovation. I think that's exactly the idea. Um, when you limit yourself, you have to come up with ways of like working around finding different solutions. So part of my problem too, I think, is like anatomy. That's not my problem, but these characters are not like super anatomically correct, but you want to have like a semblance of realism, even if they're not supposed to be like super anatomically correct. Or you just lean far left field and it's line and color style, and you don't have to really convince anybody of anything. Um, so kind of want a wide-eyed expression. Just want to select that, and I'm gonna. That's one thing I don't like about these brushes. All right, some kind of an eyelid in there. Because at the end of the day, I do want this to be like a not a realistic, but again like a painterly style. Um, but I don't want to get so caught up in the style and everything that I kind of lose. anything along the way. But so again, with him not being like human per se, there's always that like temptation to be like, oh, it's fine. I don't have to make it look correct because he's not human anyways. So um, again, that's just kind of an excuse. So I'm starting to find somewhat of a groove here. Again, kind of detaching from too much of that. It's got to be, this layer, that layer kind of thing. I think that helps. Again, I mean, to me that face looks dead, um, and I know why it looks dead. It's because I've got too much. Probably have too little saturation and too much saturation, and then it's kind of all over the place. So what I'm going to do is go up here, get this, and I'm going to make some overall adjustments. Kind of smooth out some areas just slightly. Just think we need to have some more saturation in those highlights. Sorry, y'all. This thing keeps messing up on me. I don't see it all the time. There you go. And I honestly might be getting a little too caught up in detail. I know I am. I think what I want to do. I think I don't like the overly rendered stuff. Um, so I think I'm going to go back to this. Go here. And this is the beauty of what I was just talking about. It's kind of going back to the start of things and I may not even like any of that. So the face looks dead in the fact that like um there were uh, not enough saturation or contrast. It's like though like the overall like it was kind of hard to explain. When you have too much contrast but not enough saturation or the correct level of saturation, it can get very much like lifeless. So when it doesn't look right, it kind of look. I just say it looks dead because it looks lifeless. Um, and so even having like just straight up, you know, this, which I think I'm gonna bring the line art um, back in just for a second, just because I want to reapproach things a little bit. Um, I think part of my problem was I was losing the structure that I had initially too soon. So I want to keep that structure there at least until I get to a point where I'm happy um, with it. But I'm just going to duplicate that again just so I have another backup. So here, what I'm going to do, because part of the iconic design of these characters in this world is sort of how I'm approaching the facial features and stuff. So you have this really swooping like eye shape here, and so I don't want to lose that because that's like a defining characteristic almost. So again, I'm just going to start kind of filling in just with some bold colors. Maybe not those colors exactly. I need to. Part of the problem with me working on this is like I said, this whole live stream is just me figuring out kind of what I want to do as far as moving forward. But um, Dalton just asked, is this part of a scene or is it just a portrait? It is part of a scene. So basically, this is like the first volume of the Forest Guardians that I'm working on. Um, so let me fix this here for a second. So this is the first volume. So the first page, I can actually pull it up. Um, let me open these files. So this is the first page. Um, and so basically you have Arlen at the top of this cliff, and these are just rough sketches. But he's like, looking down, and he's like, I can do this, just don't think, just jump. And so he's being a little adventurous. So you see Teague, his best friend down here, who's this kind of pig-like character, um, saying, Arlen, you don't have to, we're already late. So he's down here, but you see a little close call out of him here. So overall, this page is like cliffside, forest, stream, or river down here. And then you've got the page two, which is what I'm working on, which is Arlen jumping. So you get this really fast, like action lines here of him like jumping. Um, and then you see up here, it's a little hard to see with this background thing I got going on, but splash, and then water, bubbles, all that stuff. And then you see Arlen like floating. So we don't really know what happened to him. Is he okay? Is he not? Um, and then page three is Teague at the bottom yelling Arlen's name after he jumped in. You see splashes. and then he's like running towards the water. He said, "Are you all right? Hold on." And then he gets there, and Teague and Arlen. So Arlen pops up, and he's like, "Oh, okay, he's fine." And then you see Teague here a little perturbed, um, and then they're kind of Arlen's trying to like reassure him that he's okay. So Teague is very much the bashful, like, friend, and then Arlen's the more adventurous one that's always like causing his friends to worry about him. I've got some more there, but I don't want to spoil too much of it because I do want to release this as like a volume, and so each volume is going to be roughly, uh, maybe somewhere around 12 pages, maybe 12 to 24, depending on how long I want to make them. But um, but yeah, and maybe honestly, working without that background might help me too. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go painterly just for the sake of going painterly. Um, so maybe I need to like play around with doing more of a line and color style, which is more traditional, like comic graphic novel. Um, the thing with that is, I just don't want to get so caught up in the line work that I lose the feeling of the pencils, which tends to happen a lot with me, anyways. But maybe I could try it. Maybe it'll look all right. So I can get this ink brush. And honestly, if I'm inking, I would do the inks traditionally. So I would not do the inks digitally just because I'm not as used to doing digital inks. Um, and I would do the inks basically. Sorry, I would do the inks before doing any color. Um, where's my paint bucket? Go. So I mean, if I'm doing the inks, like obviously you could go more or less detailed with it. Um, you've got everything ranging from Rick and Morty to. That's the other thing. Just inking on this tablet is not the easiest thing in the world. Yeah, I don't think I would do inks like this. Probably looking at more of a painterly approach if I'm doing it all digital. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn. So I've done other things like digitally before, and they turn out okay. Um, I just get caught in this stage all the time where I'm looking at the flat colors with the pencils, and at a certain point you have to lose the pencils if you're gonna go with that like painterly approach. Um, and I usually just get caught up in feeling like, oh, I'm such a traditional artist, and just not being able to like see it in my head as clearly as I would if I was like painting this. Um, the other thing is like I could do everything traditional from ink to color, just do like a watercolor or gouache. I just I don't know. I was experimenting, trying to figure out a workflow for this. Um, the other thing that I could play with doing is cleaning up the pencils in a way that, you know, erasing lines that interfere, my kind of more sketchy lines. And I could really just kind of preserve pencils to a point. I just don't want to lean on that as like a crutch for the style, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm gonna mess around with it a little bit more and see if I can't find a good balance. What's going on there? Oh, there we go. If I can't find a balance, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. I mean, I want to have. I want this to turn out good. Let's see. Um, yeah. Again, I'm not super happy with like what I could get. Maybe I need to move on. Let me mess around on this. See if I can't just start fresh on something and see what comes out of it. It may be less of a human character. Maybe that'll help me. So just getting things set up here. Yeah, add that back there just to give me something underneath there. I really like this character design. It's been a long time on this one. Developing out, playing around with different things that I could do. Obviously, there are so many like pig um, creatures out there. Um, Dalton, you said, is the nose at an odd angle? Or am I confused? It looked to be facing the viewer. Are you talking about this character or the other one? Other fella. Let's look at it. Yeah, so it's a little weird how it's facing. So I would say that like it's probably got this like if this is the center line of the face, we're kind of following the face down like that, and then so obviously the eyes are there, nose is there, mouth is there. Um, so it could wrap and diminish a little bit. Um, but overall, I think that's relatively accurate, and I think that's part of my problem with it is, sorry, I can't even see it. Um, so you can see here, like I'll do that again just because you can see it. Basically, so it like comes down like this. So like that's the center line of the face. So obviously their eyeballs, nose, mouth, and then you kind of have one of these happening. So like if you're drawing like the skull shape, basically, um, um, no, I don't think that the nose is necessarily wrong. I think maybe if anything, since it's like a non-human nose, just refining like the shape of it and getting it, um, because it's supposed to come up like this, maybe a little more, and then diminish a little sooner. So pushing that could help, honestly, and kind of maybe cutting back on that a little more, um, and really even just I don't know, it maybe it's hard to tell. I think it's more or less right. Maybe the shape is just, if anything, a little off. Um, and that's part of the hard part of like pencils to digital straight away is like you've obviously got a disconnect between the two. I will say probably the biggest thing that I'm probably getting wrong here, since you pointed out, is maybe even just it could be too wide. He's supposed to have a wide nose. You can see in like this one, like his nose is really wide. But I think maybe having it more in that shape might help. And then I don't know. It's we're supposed to be looking down on it, but maybe can push it a little more to the side, but the center of the face is there. But maybe, I mean, doesn't hurt to kind of readdress it. Let's see. Let's just go. So I think too, like if we're looking at distance from his face, you could be right, Dalton. I mean, it could have been a little far over for the angle. I don't know how much different that is. Probably helps a little bit. I'm the artist. I don't know. Sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes you just got to figure it out as you go. Um, the hardest part, I think, is just knowing kind of the shape at this angle. I don't know, because I mean, you've got this little bit of. Sorry, you can't even see that. I need to get this thing fixed. I don't know what's going on with it. Oop, there we go. So I don't know. That kind of might be a little bit on the nose, so to speak. So you've got this little thing here where the lip kind of comes down. So you really could even do away with that. Oh, well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to play around with that one a little bit more. But um, yeah, the anatomy of those creatures in particular is supposed to be kind of like in between a deer and kind of like a bovine nose, more or less. Um, really, I'm struggling with how detailed to make these characters because I could go kind of more simple like this, and there will be times where I do. Um, or I could get super detailed and make it that much crazier. I don't know. That's part of why I'm like working through this real time. I'm trying to figure out like what the design is in the first place. Um, but no, I appreciate you like kind of calling that out, seeing something and saying something. It helps because sometimes I look at it too long, and it's good to take a step back from it. Um, yeah, so I was really not happy with how that other one was coming out. So I want to try to take probably just 10 minutes here and just work on this and see if I can't get, especially since it's like really non human features, see if I can't get something that I like here. Um, so Teague is supposed to be very sort of like muted pink color. Um, with actually like these darker spots. Not that dark. Yeah, sort of more grayed out. Almost like liver spots, even though he's only probably in his early 20s, late teens. So yeah, I don't know. Part of me just wants to like just do it all traditional. Um, just because I feel like I get too caught up in digital, but I like the idea of doing digital. Um, I might just honestly have to do a more graphic approach. I don't know. That is why I'm working on it, though. I really like I like the idea of just like all one layer, just go for it. Not worrying too much about the fact that it's digital, but it's just so hard to do for me. I feel like I'm constantly like aware of the fact that like, hey, you've got to get this right. You've got to, don't mess it up, kind of thing. But it's like, what am I messing up in reality? I just don't think I have a digital style. Some people have like this insane like digital workflow and it really works for them, but I don't know. I've never really been able to nail mine down. I don't know. Again, I like the idea of it. I just don't know if that would be the best thing for this project. I don't know. And what I could do, honestly, is have, you know, 80% of the artwork be done traditionally, and then I could, do the last 20 to 25% in Photoshop just to bring everything back together. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to do things, and I don't think there's any one particular way that's like the way to do it. Um, my biggest thing is I just want kind of a workflow to um, approach it. Yeah, Dalton, you're right. I mean, that's basically being an artist is doing something and then being like, nah, I could do better. And that's the thing is like, I think that's where I'm at is like, I know I can do better. Um, it's just like sticking to it long enough to like fully see out one idea. Um, because you see a lot of artists online and like a lot of what you see is the sped up process. Um, rarely do you see the real time rendering of something unless someone like shows you that. So I like the idea, not to change subjects, that like Teague is just always tired. He's just like got these permanent bags under his eyes, um, where he's just like, you know, being drug around everywhere, and he's just like, I can't do it anymore. um, Let's go more of that. There we go. Yeah, I like that idea. It's kind of funny. And that's the thing, like, I can do this all day long, um, and come up with 20 different ways to draw these characters. And I have. I have sketchbooks full of different designs and things for these characters. But at the end of the day, like, at the end of, hopefully today, but whenever, I would like to have something that's at least thought through just a bit more. Um, Even if it does look inherently digital, like I'd rather produce something, even if it's like a webcomic style. Um, yeah, yeah, Dalton, exactly. That's the epitome of this character is basically being the mom of a friend group or the dad of a friend group, where you're just constantly like, no, don't do that. But yeah, I'd like to have something nailed down, but I don't. It is what it is. I'm not gonna get too hurt if I'm working on this forever. This is my personal project, so I don't want to like, you know, make it not fun. But I also would like to see it turn into something. If for nothing else, just for me to have something to share. Oh, I don't know if it's super public knowledge yet, but I'm going to be a guest of honor at a certain convention um, here locally that I don't know if I can fully disclose that information yet, so I'm not going to say what convention, but it is local. Um, so yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Um, I was supposed to do it a couple years ago, and it got canceled because of COVID. So all you nerds out there, come out and see me. Yeah, we have like maybe I should have said that because we don't have very many. um, there's like Big Lick Comic Con and a couple others, and I'm not doing Big Lick. I think that already passed. But yeah, this will be for next year, I believe. So yeah, like I said, don't know if I'm fully supposed to like say that, but oh well. All four or five of you watching, keep that a secret. Unless, of course, you're the person that invited me, then sorry. Didn't say it. I didn't say it. All right. I like the feeling of this. I'm like looking over here at OBS because I'm seeing it smaller. Um, I like the feeling of it. I want to do like maybe some overall stuff to it to like give me more ambiance. So I'm actually going to take a bluish color, and this might look a little funky, but I want to give some atmosphere. Let's get opacity down. So he's outside in the sunlight. Obviously, that's too much. So sunlight is in between. It's not green, but it is like a very warm, not warm, goes towards this range. Not like blue, blue, blue here, but like kind of more down towards this. Let's just do a layer of that. Just because I want to knock that contrast down because he's outside. But then, yeah, you're good, Dalton. You are free to leave, I guess. Um, I gotta head out here soon and get some dinner. But I kind of want to. I like the direction this is going, honestly. But that's the problem. Is like I've said, the pencils. The pencils can look awesome and have the feeling you want, but then the second you take the pencils away, it's like, nah, I don't know if I'm really feeling it. Um, you know what I mean? Like, obviously he's got no eyeballs, but um, like the second you take the pencils away, it's like, do I really like that? Um, and I don't know if I hate it, honestly, given context. And that's the hard part too. Is like, if I'm actually doing this as a piece to go in here, I obviously would have the surrounding context of it too. Um, just use that for example. It's not going to be a very good example, but so obviously, like, not that exactly, but just to give some context of like, hey, there's color behind him. He's not just on a white or brown canvas. Um, hey, I got 8 people watching on YouTube. Thanks for joining. If you're just now joining, I am working on a personal project of mine called the Forest Guardians. I've kind of just been working on and off for the last couple years, but it is Narnia meets D&D meets a lot of other things that I'm inspired by. But yeah, so I'm working on this character now, and I'm just talking about how the pencils, when you take pencils away, it's like, you know, unfortunate because they have a certain feeling to them that you want to keep, but inevitably, unless you just have pencil sketches, like you can't keep that feeling. So you have to like keep the initial feeling from those pencils in your overall design. And I was just doing some overall like uh, sorry, my brain just short circuited. Trying to get the overall contrast for the setting and the daylight and all that stuff right now. But yeah, Dalton, not, and that's the struggle. You said you really like the contrast between the more detailed sketches to the more simplistic background shots. Um, it's like, how do we keep the feeling of the original intention throughout, and finishing it to a, you know, completed look that would actually like pass for a finished product. Um, but yeah, so part of that is like you got to establish your contrast too, and that's something that I haven't really done a whole lot of. But one way I can do that is through the adjustments panel. Um, I can play with contrast here. So obviously, like I can find, um, kind of where I want it to end up. And I can push and pull things too. So like, obviously we don't want to do too much, but and so like when you take that away, it's like, okay, well you got the basics there. I really need to get this thing fixed. Like you've got the basics there, but it's just not as put together. Um, so yeah, I mean it's just a balance. It's all a balance of just trying to figure all this stuff out. And that is why I am glad that this project did not get funded on Kickstarter a couple years ago because I did not have any of this figured out. Um, not to any level of comfort that I was willing to put behind it. So if you backed me on that, like I would have finished it. Um, so I appreciate you backing it, but I'm glad that it did not get backed when it did. Dalton, you said you meant the difference between the detailed close up of Tig and Arlen to the. Oh yeah, and I mean that's something you do in comics in general. Like you have a simplified way of communicating, like, oh, that's his nose shape, and what I was talking about earlier is basically like in this you can't put too much detail because if you do, when you zoom out, it just gets lost. So you do want to have a simplified way of communicating those details, um, especially facial features and stuff like that. And that's where I have to figure out what style I'm going with because if I do, you know, just painterly and not relying on any kind of line work, then I've really got to decide like how rendered, how, you know, contrasty, how soft, how, do I leave brushstrokes in? Do I try to like render out everything? And I just not sure. I'm not sure where I stand on all that, which is why I'm doing this today. So, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I like the contrast even within a page of like, shot to shot. And that's really the whole reason that I let me go to my monologue camera for a second. um, One of the reasons that I felt comfortable doing this as a graphic novel at this stage rather than like an illustrated novel, which they sound the same but they're different. So an illustrated novel, if anyone's seen like Dinotopia or anything like that, where it's like a book written in novel format, um, but it has illustrations like in the sidebar, in the margins, full spread illustrations to accompany the story. Um, I was initially doing this project, The Force Guardians, as an illustrated novel, um, but I really just as I went on, I didn't really like that idea as much, and I felt much more comfortable because I have a lot of like knowledge in video and storytelling through video, and through my company Booth 42 Studio, I do have a production company, and so thinking about this story in terms of shot to shot, Dalton, that's pretty much what you're talking about is the contrast between close up and far away is you have a wide, medium, and a tight angle. And so thinking about each page and each frame of the page in a storytelling capacity that is almost like video. And so that's why a lot of like, people who create graphic novels and comic books and stuff like that, they'll talk about understanding the camera and understanding like positioning the camera and moving the camera around in order to convey you know, basically what the story you're trying to tell. And so having those wide shots where you're getting less detailed on the characters, but you're getting more environment, closer shots on faces, but then maybe the background's blurred out. So think about it like in terms of if you're watching an animation or like a movie or something like that, it would be more akin to that. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Dalton. That's 100%. Um, yeah, I'm glad you noticed that and pointed that out because it makes me happy. All right. So I'll go ahead and share this again. So again, I'm not entirely sure. I like the read on this, like when you're looking at it from a distance. Um, I like the read that it's giving, but I'm not sure. Obviously, like these things are. This is going to be a. I don't know how big this is. Let me see how big I made this. So it's 8.5 by 11 inches. That's what I sketched it on. Um, so when you see it like full size, this is like 100%. Obviously not on your screens, but the way I'm seeing it. Um, so you're going to have some detail on it. Um, so really, it's just a matter of do I like level of detail? Obviously, color, contrast, all that stuff will get figured out. I can go more or less, obviously. And Dalton, that's what I was talking about earlier when you were talking about like looking dead is less contrast. So obviously, you want to find like a middle ground between all that. Um, and then obviously brightness as well. But yeah, I don't know. I'm uh, I'm torn, but I like the overall I think direction that it's going now. I think I just want to kind of fine tune kind of my approach. But I like overall kind of where it's going. If you want to see more of this project, I don't know if I'm going to stream like every single week. Um, just kind of on Sundays when I have time to, um, and when we don't really have a whole lot else going on, I'll probably hop on here, but won't be doing it every single week. Um, but if you like it, let me know. I'll show more of this process and share more kind of as I'm working on it and whatnot. Um, let's give him some actual black eyeballs so it doesn't look like he's dead. Um, but yeah, And if you have any ideas or suggestions on what I could do, people to watch, I watch a lot of like Tim McBurney on here on YouTube. Um, I follow a lot of people who do this kind of thing, and so I have a general idea of like mashing different styles of people that are influencing me together. Um, I just there's part of me that can't like let go of that painterly idea. Um, so maybe next time I stream, I'll do like a full traditional piece. Maybe I'll do a page that's just traditional only, and I'll um, try that. But blah 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 blah. Let me know if you also would like to see like me sketching some pages too, because I think that's really cool. Um, I think that's where I kind of specialize, and I inked this page. It still obviously has the pencils on it. But like if I were to take like the pencils away, you can kind of more or less get an idea of what that would start to look like if I did that. And then, so like, let's see here. That's not what I want. It's not what I want either. Oh, that's because that is in. There we go. So like I could also do like just I could ink it, and I could do you know basically like a coloring book, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, I just don't know if that's really what I want to do. Um, so I don't know. Let me know what y'all think. If you like either style personally, like in things that you read or look at. I personally like sort of an in between style. Um, and so I don't really know what that means necessarily for like how it develops. I don't really know how to tie all those things together. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna call it there though. I need to go get some food, and I appreciate you guys so much for watching and following along. Um, that's I did one of these 2 weeks ago and had a couple people on it, but we've got like 8 people watching on YouTube, so that's really cool. Thank you guys so much. Um, like I said, I'm going to do these kind of semi regularly, um, maybe once a week, if not like every 2 weeks or something like that. Just showing a little bit of this process. I also do like full canvas paintings and other things like that. You can see a couple of them behind me. Um, you can go to my Instagram, Seth Booth Art or Seth Booth. Yeah, I think Seth Booth Art. Um, check it out there. I'm on Facebook as well, but hardly anyone's on Facebook. It's more for my family to see. But yeah, follow me here on YouTube. Subscribe if you want to see more. Um, I release the occasional like put together vlog slash videos too. And if you guys want to see more of that stuff, let me know. I can also certainly put more effort into doing that. But in the meantime, I will leave you. Um, and I hope to see a few more subscribers.